Paisans, welcome back to another episode of Calcio Culture. We're here. We're talking match week 26. We're talking a little bit of Champions League, a little bit of Europa League, a little bit of Conference League. But as always, this is your host, Vos, and I am joined by my co-host today, Motts.
Yo, yo, yo. How we doing? Another crazy week of Calcio, more dropped points, for everybody, almost all the teams besides Juventus, which is good because they are slowly climbing. And who would have thought that they would be 8 points out of the lead? Other teams are climbing as well, and a lot of teams are dropping out of the race as well. So it was a crazy week, a lot of movement in the standings, which you love to see. Actually, I don't think too many technically moved, but a lot of implications on the standings and future standings for the games to come.
Yeah, a lot of changes with the amount of points that were dropped this weekend. There weren't only draws that were dropped points. There were some major losses, notably Milan lots of Torino, which really kind of screwed things up for them in the table. Roma picked up some points. But I think the most significant thing is Napoli is no longer at the top of the table. And I was thinking about this today, and I don't know how long it's actually been, but they may have been first for like 4 or 5 months at this point.
Yeah, they were first for a long time. That's a good point. I don't know how long it was, but it's not surprising that they let their best player out go and didn't replace him, and now they're starting to stumble. And that's what I said last episode. I don't think that they have the juice anymore to win the Scudetto. It's looking like will they have it to even finish top four with how Juventus and Atalanta are starting to kind of storm ahead and Napoli's just stumbling. But with a hard schedule coming up that we'll break down more later on. But yeah, they had the throne for a while and it is gone. And I wouldn't be surprised if Inter never looks back. And this week coming up, which we'll talk about later on, is very pivotal as they are matching up head to head. Inter and Napoli, that is.
Yeah, very big one. The other notable one that I wanted to just address, Roma are somehow 2 points off of sixth place now. I don't know how we've gotten it. It's slowly been Claudio Ranieri, I guess, riding the ship. But I didn't even think they were going to be this close this early. I knew it was going to go well. I predicted it last week on our episode. But this is kind of astounding that they were kind of counted out of. I mean, they were in the relegation battle for like 3 or 4 months, and the fact that they've turned this around is outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely flowers to Roma in terms of how they've turned it around, especially Ranieri. Imagine if they went to him before they went to Juric, where they would be at now. But it's also a reflection on the other teams in the Serie A just not capitalizing and kind of showing off the inconsistency that we've seen this year from every single team, from top to bottom. But I don't want to put it on the poorness of other teams and the lack of productivity on the other teams. It's been Ranieri and the Roma players really riding the ship and being like, this is what we could have been all year. It just took us a little longer to kind of get the engines running. And they've been unstoppable. They haven't lost a game in the league in, I think, 8 or 9 matches now. They obviously moved on to the Europa League, which we'll talk about. They've been amazing.
Yeah, been amazing. And let's just get into it here, Mats. Last week we recorded on Tuesday, so we had seen Milan and Atalanta get knocked out. So just to give you guys an update on all European competitions here, we said Juve had one leg into the next round, going into the second leg of 2-1 on aggregate. Things fell apart in the Netherlands.
That's putting it in a very, very nice way to this Juventus team. Things fell apart is an understatement. Juventus got taken to school by a team who's in crisis right now. They're not doing well in their league, and they absolutely just showed Juventus what will, what desire, what passion is, what want is. In the second half, Juventus was not even on the pitch. It wasn't a game. It was just inevitable for PSV to score. They scored the first goal in extra time, and even when Juventus was losing on aggregate, PSV had all the dangerous chances, and they should have scored another goal in extra time. It shouldn't even gotten to extra time because PSV had so many chances within the first 90 to put it away, and Di Gregorio had an amazing game and made amazing saves, but the lack of fight on the pitch, it's not the first time I've said it about this team. Constantly in the second half of games, They look scared of the moment. They don't know how to finish off a game. They don't know how to go get a win. And then to top it off, to make it even worse, their press conference after the game was awful. I mean, there was totally different messages from the players and then the coach and Thiago Motta. He said wouldn't change anything. They they wanted it more. They outperformed us, but we gave everything we had, and I wouldn't change a thing. And then Locatelli goes to the mic, the captain of the team, and says that was awful. We had no desire. We had no fight. They wanted it more than us. We're Juventus. We need to show more. So just that miscommunication, or not miscommunication, but those two are on completely different pages, which goes to show that they're not on the same page in the locker room. They are in shambles, and it came at the worst time ever because they just beat Inter. They won 2 games in a row in the league, or 3 games in a row in the league, and you thought, "Hey, look at this Juventus team figuring stuff out," and then this happens. So it seems like every time you think Juventus is going to figure it out, they take 1 step forward and 2 steps back. Happened earlier when they beat Milan and then lost to Napoli in the second half with that dog shit performance. And once again here, beat Inter and then get knocked out in the Champions League. And it's also terrible because of what you said earlier. Atalanta, Milan, and Juventus all out of the Champions League. The 5th spot is, we can kiss that goodbye unless Roma, Lazio play in the final of the Europa League. Fiorentina win the Europa League. It's gonna be very, very tough, and we need it because we already know how much of a disadvantage the league's at in terms of money wise. So absolutely terrible for Juventus in terms of the showing. Terrible by Milan and Atalanta to not get it done, and just overall not the best look for Calcio and the Serie A.
Definitely. And to wrap on the Juve piece, I could be way off in this, but just in terms of looking at the squad and kind of like even Thiago Motta, there's nobody there anymore. I think this is like the first time in a really long time where there's nobody on Juve who has that like Fino, Alafine DNA. Like, all these guys are now being like brought through that, but there's nobody left. Like Chiellini was kind of like the last person that was like part of that winning mentality. And now it's just a complete turnover. And maybe they're just not ready for like a Champions League night where they need to get it done kind of thing. I don't know. But
100%, 100%. And I've talked about this before. Not a lot of these players have the Juventus DNA, which is like Fina Fina and grind it out to get the win. There's a couple that do, or they're on the brink, right? Like I think Gatti I see it some games, Cambiaso as well, and Locatelli, but none of them have the kind of the balls to go and grab the game and take the game, or hype up the players on the pitch and let them know what this moment means. And Thiago Motta being a first-year manager in terms of the Champions League and 3 competitions, you see him on the sidelines just not saying a word, really timid. I don't want to say timid, but just quiet, observing. He also doesn't have it as well. And I think it goes back a little bit to Giuntoli just deciding he can blow everything up and buy and sell whoever he wants. When it comes to Juventus, there's players that have the Juventus DNA and there's players that don't. And Giuntoli doesn't care about that. He just kind of goes with what he wants and players he wants. So I totally agree. That is a problem. And one last thing, their age is also a factor. They're like one of the youngest teams in the Serie A and in Europe. I think their average age is 24. So hopefully this season they're learning, and then they'll figure out what these moments mean. They've been in these moments more and more, and now they can figure out and learn how to win in those moments.
well, lucky for us on Thursday, Roma did play in the Europa League and they bailed out all things Calcio and they won their game. They won 4-3 against Porto on aggregate. They beat Porto at home basically because Paulo Dybala dropped an absolute masterclass. They went down 1-0 early, and then Dybala went off, scored 2 goals in the span of like 10 minutes. It was just vintage Dybala that I don't really think we've seen all that much this year. And this just goes to show what he's capable of doing. Just completely took over the game, was unstoppable, was picking up the ball wherever he needed to go and get it. And Roma looked really good. Porto's probably one of the better teams in the Europa League this year, and Roma just beat them. So I think they have a really good shot now at kind of turning this into a run at the final, especially when you look at what they've been able to do in the league over the last several months and really turn things around.
Yeah, I mean, Paulo Dybala showed his class and why he's been one of, if not the best players in the Serie A and Calcio over the last 10, 12 years. It's just obviously his lack of playing time due to injuries, but we know he's world class, right? And I'll tell you what, Juventus could have used him on the pitch against PSV. If you got a player of Paulo Dybala's stature and his experience, he probably understands how to go win that game like he showed in the Europa League against Porto. He fully put the team on his back and delivered 2 masterclass goals to go and take the lead. And then Roma did what they had to do the rest of the game to see out the win on aggregate. But I mean, yeah, Paulo Dybala, we know what he's about. We know he's been doing this year over year. It's just always the one knock on him isn't really his consistency, because when he's on the pitch, he's always good. It's him being on the pitch. It's his health problems. And yeah, with Ranieri and the way that they're defending and the way that they're rotating, even in the Serie A, their guys are going to be rested. Their guys they're playing with continuity. They're playing compact and they're scoring goals. So the sky is the limit for Roma. They're getting hot when you want to get hot at the end of the season when the games matter more. And yeah, they nothing but good things to say out in Roma right now.
Yeah, and to wrap on European competitions here, that's all the knockout or the playoff rounds that happened. So now we're into the next round. The teams that had buys are now playing again. And looking forward in the Champions League, Inter have drawn Feyenoord, and they have actually a pretty good path to the final, I think. And I think Inter are actually going to get that one done. Roma drew Athletic Bilbao, which is going to be a pretty hard matchup for them, but I still feel good about this team. Lazio is playing Victoria Pilsen. I don't know who they are. Lazio right now is the best team in the competition in theory, so feel good about that one. And then Fiorentina have drawn Greek side Panathinaikos, who I presume is in Athens, but could be totally wrong.
I know that a poll came out and I saw Lazio was the favorite to win the Europa League. So that's good that we have at least a favorite representative. I would love to see, I don't know if it can happen. I didn't look at the Europa League bracket, but I'd love to
It
see
can
a
happen, I think.
Roma Lazio final. That would be
Yeah.
amazing. And then in terms of Fiorentina, I know that not this exact team, but a Greek team did beat them in the Conference League finals
Olympiacos,
last year.
yeah.
So I mean, obviously, I like Fiorentina's chances, although they got some big players injured that we'll talk about later. But I just want, like I said, I want Serie A to represent. I want them to go far. So hopefully they can get this done to possibly get the 5th spot, which I'm obviously not banking on.
That wraps up Europe. We tried to go quickly and cover all our bases. And now we're going to get back to Italy. Match week 26. Great match weekend overall. I would honestly, actually, maybe not. There were some really bad games, and I'll say more so implications for the table, which would be interesting thing. The game we want to start talking about is the one that happened today as we record it Monday. Roma hosted Monza. They blew their doors off, won this game 4-0. Alexis Salamaker scored, Elder Shmurodov scored, Angelino scored, and then Brian Cristante capped things off. The reason we wanted to lead with this one is because we were already kind of highlighting Roma a little bit, and we don't think we've talked about them quite enough over the last, I don't know, month or two when they've gone on this incredible run. Like Mott said a little bit earlier, I think it's 8 or 9 games now unbeaten in the league. And this is Claudio Ranieri being able to get something done with this team that nobody else had. In this game, especially, he rotated the hell out of the squad. We're talking no Dybala, no Dovbyk, no Kone. It was pretty much essentially, and Pellegrini, and still getting it done. And I think that's the notable thing. They're scoring goals even without their best players on the field.
Yeah, Dybala did get subbed on, but yeah, he was not starting in this game. And we looked at the lineup, and at first we kind of questioned why he's rolling out this squad. Then kind of taking a step back, seeing that who they have coming up. They got a hot Como coming up, and then they have the Europa League game as well. So they're going to have 2 games next week. And so Monza's obviously in last place. So actually very smart move by Ranieri to rotate as much as he could, get those guys rested and fresh. But the level of play did not dip, which you absolutely love to see. So just great move by Ranieri there. But this game was a complete domination from start to finish by Roma. Monza didn't even have one big chance in the game at all. It was fully Roma all game long. And yeah, I mean, there was just complete domination. So what more can you ask for by Roma there?
Yeah, what I loved about this one was Sule and Baldonzi, I thought worked really well. Baldonzi kind of playing the Pellegrini role a little bit, and Sule was kind of able to get in spaces that he wanted to. He started off the left, and then at times he moved off the right. Alexis Salamaker scored a great goal off the right, cutting in on his left and scoring. But we're just seeing what we were crying out for all season, I think, under Ranieri, getting like the balance of the team a little bit more right, bringing some of the younger players through. I think Pizzilli has been one of the best players on this team all year. Angelino, for me, has gone under the radar as one of the best performers on this team, and I think he's been one of the best left backs slash left wing backs because he was even producing when they weren't playing great, and he had to play left center back at one point. Has just really been a team player all season, so it's good to see him get another goal. But my question for you, Mats, because I have not been able to figure this out: what has Ranieri done to make this team perform? Like, because they're essentially running the same formation that they did months ago. I think under De Rossi, this is how they started, essentially.
Yeah, 3-4-2-1. I even think against on Juric, they play a little bit of 3-5-2, but it was like a 3-4-2-1 for the most part. And I really don't have a great answer for that. I'd love for some of the paisanos to maybe comment and let us know. But here's my opinion. Here's what I think happened. They know what their game plan is in each game, so they don't play the same way necessarily. So when they're playing the lower level teams, they know we're gonna go dominate the ball, dominate the game, and win, right? Whereas when they play, when they play some of the higher level teams, they're gonna sit back more like they did against Napoli and understand like, hey, we might not have as much as the ball as we want to normally, right? And so I think Ranieri is doing a great job kind of expressing that to his guys and just game planning. But then, I mean, I'm looking back now at the games and you go look at the Venezia Roma game, they had 37% possession. So that's not the case there. But against Parma and against Monza, they had over 60% against both games. So I really generally just think that it's one a good game planning, good communicating, good man managing by Ranieri. And also it just took all of these guys this much amount of time to learn how to play together because we know once you overhaul a squad like that, it's going to take some time. It's not all sunshine and rainbows right away. And we're seeing that with Milan. We're seeing that with Juventus. So it's going to take time for these guys to learn how to play together and get confidence. And I think Ranieri has been able to do that by one, game planning, the messages he's sending, obviously, and then they just figured it out at the right time and they're gelling now.
Yeah, I think those are all fair points. It's hard to say. Even part of this could be they had De Rossi and they had Juric, who are more of those like hard nosed kind of guys, like Mourinho was, and that was the culture for I don't know 3 or 4 years now. And that's not what really Ranieri is. And maybe that's what maybe these are players just need to be coddled. I don't know. We're definitely seeing better Pellegrini. He hasn't even really gotten to the level that he needs to be at to really be effective in this team. But he did play really good against Porto. And I think another storyline of this is that Pellegrini's best position by far is that left wing role where he's like kind of an attacking mid and he's really struggled in other places. So I think that's a bigger conversation that's going to go out to Spalletti and the decisions he's going to have to make in a year or two. But I agree with you. And do you think they could finish in in the European spot now?
I've been saying it. I think that they can. I think that they will finish over Lazio. I want to take a quick little peek at their schedule coming up to see who they face because what a lot of teams in the Serie A, specifically Napoli, Lazio, or no, Lazio isn't too bad. Napoli, and Atalanta have very very tough games coming up, and so pending on Roma's schedule, I mean they have oh wow they got I don't know they got some tough teams coming up. They got Roma versus Juventus versus Lazio versus Inter versus Fiorentina versus Atalanta in their next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. Those are tough. But I think that they still can. I really think that they will make a run for the Europa League. You got to remember Fiorentina's got two major guys like that we'll talk about later that went down and we don't know when they're coming back. Milan, we have no idea what's going on there. Bologna they're right behind Bologna, so it's going to be a neck and neck race. And I genuinely think that they will end up getting it done. They have the quality. It seems like Ranieri's really figured out more than most of these other managers have, and so I do think they make this push and they get to a Europa League spot or a Conference League spot, one of the two.
Yeah, important to note in this one, I think this was against Mom, who are more or less going down, certainly going down, I would say. But I think what has warranted this conversation is what they've done before this game, and this was kind of the culmination of that, which is why we're giving them the flowers that we are right now. But that's Roma, and that we just want to talk about it first because it's something that everybody needs to be aware of for the rest of the season. Now, I think they're still in ninth technically, but they're right there. And if you're not watching them week in and week out now, you're missing like a really exciting team to watch, and they're going to be a team that's around for a while. A couple other big games. The first one we're going to the battle at the lake. Napoli played Como and they drop points in this one. A brutal own goal from Amir Rahmani went to play it back to Alex Moret from probably like 40 yards outside the box. And just Moret was nowhere near the goal and it just went straight in really bad. Giacomo Raspadori then answered in the 17th minute. He started at left wing this game. So it's nice to see him get on the scoring sheet. It had been quite a while. And then later on in the game, 77th minute, a guy Motts has been gassing up a lot recently. I think it's pronounced Asandio. He scored, final score 2-1. Como beats Napoli.
Yeah, I mean, right on cue. I said last episode, I think Napoli don't have the firepower to score goals and win games. Logan also said they're lacking concentration in the final 10 minutes of the game.
That's
And
true. That's a good point.
they don't score enough goals, one, and two, they let up a late goal to Asendiao, who has scored 3 straight games now. He's 19-year-old they signed from Barcelona. Him and Nico Paz have been taking this league by storm, and it goes to show that it's very, very against the classic Italian culture where it's like we don't want the young kids to play. Look what happens when you let the young kids play. They not only do well, but they succeed. They score goals. They make impact on games. And so it's why are you not giving these kids a chance? This guy scored against Juventus, Fiorentina, and now Napoli. Those are not small clubs. Those are the best of the best in Italy. He's 19 years old, and Nico Paz is doing the same thing next to him. So they're firing on all cylinders. They're pretty I don't want to say they're Como now is confidently staying up, but that win puts them at 28 points, 7 points off of the 18th place, and they're only 3 points behind 11th place Torino. They have momentum. They're playing well. They have a great style of play. They have a manager who's a fantastic in Cesc Fabregas. And I think there's more to come with Como, Nico Paz, and Ascendi out. We got to keep watching them.
Yeah, we do. I think all the players, and I think you nailed it. I would be very surprised they went down at this point. We talked about it a little bit, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. They're by far the best team that are technically in the relegation battle. I think 7 points clear now. They're going to be good. It'll be interesting to see what they can retain next year. If they can retain Fabregas, if they can retain all these players.
They got money. So they might even get better. They put a bid in for Tio Hernandez. They, like I said in the beginning of the season, they got they're the richest owner now. He's got some tobacco company. So, and if they keep doing their strategy of let's just go poach Barcelona and Real Madrid youngsters that they don't need and let them play, they can even go. The next thing you know, they're probably going to go poach somebody from the Juventus next gen because we sell all of our young players because we're stupid and don't want them to play, and they're going to tear up the league and then sell them for 40, 50, 60 million dollars the way they keep playing.
Could be the next Atalanta too. Just buying those like in between guys, the 15, 20 million euro guys.
People have compared them to Atalanta, but I think the owner's so rich that he's going to go get like brand name players and pay them. Like they tried getting a lot of brand name players in the summer and paying them. They didn't all come because you don't know what the experiment's going to be. But they did get some Barcelona like retirees. Didn't always work out. Like Belotti didn't work out for it. But having the balance of some of the older guys that have been there and some of the younger guys that are hungry and want to prove themselves is great balance to have. And Como and Cesc Fabregas are really figuring it out. So I do foresee them to be here for a long time because of the funds that they have. And I think that the owner will just pay those guys to make them stay around. And why would you not want to stay in Como?
Very true. We got to flip the script to the other team, though. Napoli, like we said, first time not in first place in a really, really long time. I think this game really showed what we have been crying out for. They needed another forward. Raspadori scored, but Raspadori cannot be the answer when you need to rotate somebody. And David Neres was a massive step down from Kvaratskhelia, but when he's out, the step down's even further because I don't think Politano or Raspadori are even close to his level at this point, that being David Neres. So in a game like this, Lukaku was basically non-existent to me. So, like, you really don't have much. Raspadori's goal came from kind of a weird one-on-one press, and he did have a good finish. And I always shit on Raspadori, but I'll give him that. They're they're not gonna be able to keep up with Atalanta anymore, in my mind. After what Atalanta just did, I don't see because they're not defending that well anymore either,
Mhm.
and that's what's
Yeah,
a bit scary.
it's tough. I mean, Conte, there's not much more he can do that what than he's already done. He's already overachieving, right? He's in second place. I don't see him staying there. Atalanta, yes. What I will say about Atalanta, and we'll get into it when we talk about them, they also have a tough schedule coming up. So, but so do Napoli. Like Napoli play Inter next game. If they lose that, that's so going to be so bad for them. And then Fiorentina next. But Conte, he's really out of ideas here. He's going back to his 3-5-2, which I don't think
It's like
either.
I think part of the problem is he is a little bit going back to the 3-5-2, but it's more I think it's more 4-3-3 than 3-5-2 from what I saw. Like I would if you're gonna go back to your 3-4-3 or 3-5-2 Conte, play another wingback because Politano did some good defensive work, but like you're not the
He's
team.
not a wing back.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the side they scored on as well with Diao, so I just think Conte's, like, out of ideas, and, like like I said, what he's pulled off already is already an insane accomplishment, and not replacing your best player unless Lukaku starts to kinda have some of his earlier season form or find some of his Inter form, which I think those days are obviously behind him. I don't see where the goals come from. Scott McTominay, he's a good player, but can he score a goal every single game? Probably not. And then their defense, I don't really know what exactly has been happening defensively these last couple of games. They've only really allowed. I mean, the Rachmani goal was pretty like, that's not gonna happen every game. So if you
Yeah.
take that away, they allowed 1 goal from open play. They let Lazio get 2, but other than that, they've allowed 1 goal in every game since the Juventus one. So, yes, they are it's when they're allowing the goals in terms of lacking concentration, but there's just no answers offensively because if you go 4 straight games with allowing 1 goal and you're drawing 3 of those 4 games, that's you're lacking that offensive firepower that Kvara brought.
Yeah, and I guess
And
with Cavada, it was the plan was kind of win 2-1 versus like Conte maybe like 2 or 3 years ago was win 1-0. And this team isn't good enough really to win 1-0. And without Kvaratskhelia, you're not necessarily going to get that second goal. And I think,
I also think you can't push as many guys forward as
yeah,
the opposing team because you know Kavada can be out in 4 dribbles. So you have to leave guys back, so it makes it harder to score because you're parking such a low block and you have the numbers advantage. With Kavada not there, Raspadori does not even come close to holding the same threat. Neither does Spinazzola, neither does Politano on there's just a straight counterattack. I'm not talking like opportunities in the final third either. So they don't need to pay as much attention to those guys, which means we can send more guys forward, which means there's no more numerical advantage for them defensively. It's now one-on-ones, and we can string passes together and do give and goes in order to get by them. And then you have these mental lapses and errors that they can shoot themselves in the foot. So Napoli are going to have to play pretty goddamn close to perfect in every single game to get results because they don't have a superstar that can bail them out like they used to have in Osimhen and Cavada. They have nobody now.
yeah. And one other thing I want to pull out from this one, Bongiorno kind of still getting full up to fitness, getting back up to match rate. I didn't think he played very well in this game. And granted, like not a goal didn't come from that side, and there was one own goal, but just something to watch. The other thing I noticed, he kind of made a couple runs forward, and he's just so much worse than Bastoni. Like no matter how good
And
Bongiorno is,
Calafiori and
I
Calafiori.
forget like when you watch like a good defensive center back run up with the ball, it like puts in your mind how good those two guys are, and it's
Yeah,
kind
bro.
of insane. But here's a question for you, Bots, because I'm looking at Napoli right now, and they're gonna finish probably top 5, like worst case scenario, right? Like it probably won't get much worse than that. And this might be a little bit of an overreaction for me, but looking to next year, I feel really bad about this team because we're
Mhm.
talking Lukaku's older, Politano's older, Spinazzola's older, Gio Di
Zambo's a free
Lorenzo,
agent.
yeah, Samba's a free agent. Like
Dude,
they are
Conte
not ready. They are going to have to reinforce heavy, and I don't think it's going to happen because of how De Laurentiis is.
mhm.
And Conte's
Conte
gonna. I think Conte's gonna quit. Like,
He might leave. He might quit. He might fully quit. I completely agree. Unless De Laurentiis makes some heavy investments, which listen, De Laurentiis, is he cheap? Yes, but he does always get players. Like they had Koulibaly, they had Insigne, they got Osimhen, they did have all these players.
yeah,
He has to see like, hey, we're not where we need to be. I need to invest. He might not do that. And I can very much see Conte leaving. And if Conte leave, this Napoli team are right back down to where they were last year in the middle of the table. And they're in absolute shambles. I mean, it like I said, I think 90% of this, not 90, I'd say 75% of this has been Conte and how he knows how to what this league's about, how to condition his players, how to position them, what a game plan for each week. Without Conte, these guys are nowhere near first for this long and even second place. They're probably sitting somewhere comfortably in like that mosh pit of where like the Milans and the Fiorentina and the Roma and the Bologna are. And I think next season, without having Cavada at all, they're they're 10, 11, and Conte, it is not an attractive job, and he might fully be like, I'm done with this. I performed a miracle last season. Let's go see another manager do what I just did.
I agree with you. And the other thing is it becomes like a kind of a difficult job to sell. I think, like, not an easy situation to go into, especially knowing like how the ownership behaves. They're just one to watch. I think that's going to be a story and when we get to the summer. But just wanted to kind of get your thoughts early on that one. Another game that happened this weekend, we had Milan go to Torino and lose. We had another own goal in this one. Malik Shaw took one off the dome from Magnan, trying to boot it up, winning the net. Johnny Reinders then answered 70 minutes later in the 74th minute. And then 2 minutes later, Torino score off of a quickly taken free kick to win it at home 2-1.
I mean, just more of the same from Milan in terms of lack of consistency. They have they don't know, they have no leader, they have no identity on how they want to play. They're in absolute shambles. I was watching that game and I told you before when we loaded this up, I was like, what were they trying? They crossed it 400 times to
Yeah,
just get the ball to Pulisic and have him whipping across, have him whipping across, have him whipping across. And the technical players that they have, they don't need to be whipping in crosses. They need to be playing give and goes and taking on their mans and beat. Like they have Leao, João Felix, Pulisic, and who's the striker they just signed?
Santi Jimenez, yeah.
Santi Jimenez, who they can all take on their guys. They all can play within a tight space. Like, why is the game plan crossing it? It makes no sense. And Santi Jimenez, while I think he's good in the air, I don't think he's necessarily the biggest aerial threat. He's better finding space, showing to the ball, picking up the ball, taking out his man, and scoring. So is João Felix. So is Leao. So, in my opinion, I don't know why they're trying to play wide and cross it. I'd also say I don't understand why he continually picks, or Conceição picks Musa over Fofana. The Milan's one of their biggest issues, and I think Logs has said it all year. They do not have progressive center backs, and Juventus is pretty similar when they had Gatti and Kalulu. Their center backs, whether it's Tomori, Pavlovic, whoever it's back there, do not progress the play. So that's why Fofana was so key. Musa doesn't know how to progress the play either. Reinders does, but Reinders wants to get forward. So I think you have to pick Fofana to help progress the play and get the ball further up the pitch. I'd also say, while I think João Felix has been good, when you play somebody who occupies the 10 space so much, it hinders Reinders because Reinders likes to get forward and occupy that space, but I don't think he necessarily is a 10. He's in a great role where it's the double pivot and he shoots forward. But when you have somebody already in that space, you can't really shoot forward. And I believe his goal came, I think João Felix was subbed out and then Reinders scored. He was either subbed out or pushed out wide, and then Reinders had that space to go forward. So Milan, just to me, like I said last episode, very similar. Lack of identity, lack of leadership, and then lack of consistency for their star players. And last point, and that goes to show again, Mike Maignan, probably their 1, 2, or 3 best player. You do not need to go clear that ball. You could have easily waited for that ball to come to you for whatever reason you thought to go clear it. The center back could have gotten out of the way. Yes. Hard for him to see with his back turn and the ball trying to shield the defender or the offender from the ball. So you put him in a tough spot just thinking, I have to go clear this, when you totally could have just waited for that ball to come in and pick it up. So lack of consistency there.
Yeah, important to note in this one, Christian Pulisic missed a penalty. Vanja Milinkovic-Savic had some really good saves, and Mike Maignan had some good saves. The XG battle, Milan kind of ran away with, but I will say a lot of that was because of the penalty, and Reinders' goal was inside the 6-yard box. So I think the stats paint Milan in a better light than really how this game went, because I think Torino did create a lot of good chances. And Torino, we've been saying, are a bad team to play against, so I'm not shocked that Milan dropped points. I just didn't expect them to lose this game, in all honesty. And for me, I'm starting to get the sense from Milan, and this might be because you've been saying it, Mats, you take on the identity of your manager, you take on the identity of your players. They think that they're like as good as Real Madrid in my mind. And that's how they show up for every game. It's like, we're just going to play everybody off the pitch, and it doesn't really matter how hard we try because we're that good. And that's not what happens, because they're not good enough to do that. And I think Torino's second goal is like the prime example of that. Like, oh, we fouled, like we'll switch off, we'll figure it out, like not a big deal. And then Torino is in like, we're grinding games out mode. Quick free kick, boom, goal. Milan doesn't even know what happened because everybody thinks they're like these pretty boy players. And that's fully just the
Leao and
vibe I
Tio.
get. Yeah, it
Yeah.
started with them. I think João Felix is even a little bit of that. Like,
João Felix is very much like that.
and they've got to figure out their culture. I think Contrasao could be that guy. What I don't like about the new squad, and Logue said they reinforced the squad. Fully agree. They have a lot better players than they did in January. The problem is now Contrasao is a defensive coach. And to get the most out of this team, you need an offensive coach, because most of the players in this team don't want to defend and don't want to sit in a 4-4-2 block and then hit on the counter. So you got to find a happy medium between being a creative, expansive, progressive offensive team, but then also realizing you're not good enough to be that every day and being able to grind out games. And they're not that right now. And it's the same issues. Like, it's just been the same
It is the same
all
issue.
year, just different like points of emphasis.
Yeah, there was a point in this game where Milan had 4 passes and they were in the box and a great opportunity and they didn't score. And that goes to show like what they can do when they play within their front 4 that they have. And Conceição has never been that guy to play within their front 4. He's fully, we're going to defend, we're going to counter, and then we'll score on the counter, which you're right. I mean, Milan play better that way, but they don't have the disciplined players like João Felix and Leao and Tio to want to do that consistently. And the amount that he does it at, and he did it at Porto and did it effectively at Porto. So it's I don't know if he's going to be around come next season because of that and his tactical ability. Also, if you don't finish in the European spot, I don't think you would deserve to be around, as even though you were hired halfway through the season. But with the money they spent in the summer and the players that they got, I know those players lack leadership and consistency. They have to be doing better than Lazio and Fiorentina, which I don't know if they will because of how inconsistent they are and the leaders they have in their locker room. And it's funny you bring up Real Madrid because I saw on Twitter that Tio wants to go to Madrid, and it's like, does he have the the ability to play for Madrid? Yes. Does he have the consistency? Absolutely not. If he were to go to Madrid, he would get lost in the rotation there because he doesn't have the discipline nor the consistency that all those guys at Madrid have.
Yeah, I think I don't know if people that haven't watched it, you should watch it. David Beckham documentary. It's really good on Netflix. David Beckham, I think he said it perfectly, and obviously this would be the guy that knows. He said at Real Madrid, there are the Galacticos, and then there's the workers, and you are one of them. Like Danny Carvajal, like obviously a worker. Casemiro, obviously a worker. Teo Hernandez, not really either. Like, if he goes there, like, I don't like, he's a hard guy to get into, like get into your team correctly. So even moving on from him, I don't think Milan would be able to get the money that they think he's going to command even at this point.
Yeah, I mean, his contract's winding down, so if they don't extend him, then they're gonna have to sell him for cheaper. At the end of the day, I don't think you have to get top dollar for him. Just sell him for 30, 40, like kind of what it looks like Juventus is gonna do for Dusan. Just kind of cut your losses. I don't It's not even a loss because it's not like you guys splashed the cash on Tio, right? You guys kind of did make him. So did you not sell him at his peak? No, that stinks. But at least you made money on him, you know? Don't let him go for free.
Yeah,
That's kind of
which
my
they've been
thoughts
burned
there.
by a lot. Donnarumma, Kessié, like you go through all those guys. There's a lot.
Mhm.
But to wrap on this one, I want to talk about Torino for just a second. Vanoli's a great coach, and they had a little bit of a slip in the middle of the season where they were really bad after they lost Duvan Zapata, and they fully figured it out. You can see Vanoli is a Conte kind of product. He's an assistant coach, and you can just see the Conte fingerprints and DNA all over how this team plays. It is just relentless work. Everybody's rolling up their sleeves, doing the hard work. Even Cesare Casadei, who's like this young, up and coming Italian guy who could be like this kind of like pretty cute guy, like can play fancy. No, in the pivot with Ricci, running up and down the field, getting it done. He looks phenomenal out there. Ricci hasn't missed a beat all season. He looks amazing up there. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Tony Sanabria because I think he's had a really good season. He hasn't really showed up on the score sheet all that much, but he's been the guy that's been a lot of these games, like helping Che Adams score goals, making the run for the team. And yeah, he's been around the league for a long time, and I think he's a guy that's gone under the radar this season. And then we've said it a whole bunch. Vanja Milinkovic-Savic for me is one of either the goalie of the season so far. If not, he's number two. He's kind of bailed this team out a couple of times. And then ultimately, you have to give your hats off to the center back pairing. They've been great all season, and now Torino is one of the worst teams to play against in the league.
Yeah, I mean, they've figured out, maybe not, I don't want to necessarily say right the ship, but they figured out how to float. They're doing it by draws, which you lost your best striker. Che Adams been in and out of the lineup. So at this point, it's just make sure you guys are respectable, or you're staying in the league, and they're doing that. They've drawn a lot of their last games, but the teams that they're playing are not walk in the parks. They've drawn Juventus, they've drawn Fiorentina on a red card, they drew Atalanta, they just beat Milan. So these aren't walk in the park teams, and they're getting results against them, and then they can go out, play a Monza this week, get 3 points, play a Parma next week, hopefully get 3 points, and just kind of do what Torino do. They're not doing anything overperforming. Like last year, I believe they finished 10th with 41 goals and 41 goals allowed. They're right around that pace now. We did think that they would be better. They've been plagued by injuries, so we'll see what they kind of bring next year and who they reload. But those two pairing in the midfield, if they can keep them in the
I
summertime,
was oh I don't
they'll be really good to go. I don't know if they'll be able to. Ricci did just sign a contract. So
I mean
if
if
they're selling Ricci, he's going to be sold for a lot. And they're signing, what's his name from Chelsea?
Cesare
Kaisi.
Casadei, yeah,
Yeah,
he's
he
there. I mean, he was playing.
he
He played
just signed.
really
So, and
well.
if you bought him, you sign a contract. I don't know how long that is, but so both those guys are going to have to go for top dollar if they sell them, which it sounds like Torino wants a ton of money for Ricci. So if he is to be sold, it's probably in the Prem, but we'll see.
The other thing with Ricci is he's the captain right now. Like,
He is.
so like if they can keep Ricci and Casadei and then add a couple pieces, they are very quickly like kind of in that Bologna level squad when they made that run. If they add the right pieces around them, kind of thing. So
Yeah,
it's going to be an
agreed.
interesting one, but they definitely got to reinforce correctly. But to keep us rolling here, we'll go straight to Bologna because that's a good one. They visited Parma, new coach. Parma got the manager bump, beat Bologna 2-0. There was a penalty in this one converted by Boni. And then in 79th minute, Simon Som doubled the lead to seal this one at 2-0. And Parma got it done. Parma counterattacking got it done. Bologna had 75% possession, 16 shots, only one on target. And this is what we saw at the beginning of the season with Parma. Maybe they just needed a new manager to light a fire under their ass or something.
Yeah, I mean, hey, in last with the last manager, they might get a red card, lose their head. So
Yeah, chill.
obviously, small sample size, good win against Bologna.
Great win, I would
But
say.
yeah,
Great
great
win.
win, and it's huge for them in terms of relegation. But we need to see consistency now. Bologna obviously absolutely dominated this game, so I don't want to take too much from it because we have seen Parma get great wins before against teams like Milan and teams like other teams like that. But can they carry over? Can this manager do it again? Is what I want to see. One thing I want to shout out about Parma, and I'm gonna probably butcher his name. Their goalkeeper,
Suzuki.
Suzuki, is a beast. We
Yeah,
didn't talk
beast.
about it too much last week. He had a double save against Roma that was probably a double save the save of the year. He's actually really good. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets bought by a team next year. And yeah, I just wanted to give him his flowers. He's a
Yeah,
very,
he's
very
been
good
great
goalie.
too. I mean, he's definitely in the conversation for like one of the best top 5, I would say, this year. And he's really good with his feet, which I think is a little bit different from the other 2 guys I mentioned, De Gea and, Vanja Milinkovic-Savic. So he's a young and up and coming guy. He's definitely gonna be in this league for a long time as if he stays, and just a matter of which club he's gonna end up with. But I totally agree with you. And for Fiorentina, I do wanna say that's
Oh yeah,
not Fiorentina, Bologna, big
that
loss
was bad.
points. Big
Big
loss
loss.
points. Like, even getting 1 point out of that would be massive because now you got Milan at the weekend. You have the makeup game against Milan coming up. You're even on points. There was pressure to win that game. There's pressure to get points out of that game. Now it's kind of doubled.
Mhm.
And these are the games you gotta get 1
Yeah.
point out of the end like
I
this.
think that this was a game that was almost perfectly timing on what you said last week about Italiano and how it's the best part, but also the worst part because they had 75% possession, but they had no big chances. They had 0.67 XG. They weren't like they had the ball, but they were doing nothing with it. And we've
Yeah.
seen an Italiano team constantly do that. Just recycle the ball, recycle the ball, and never actually put in a good chance or have a good opportunity. And I don't really understand why like obviously they were going for it, but they weren't like even when Parma scored that second goal, yes, Bologna they overcommitted too many men forward, but they weren't creating or developing anything dangerous in Parma's final third. Parma was essentially just waiting for them to mess up a pass, which they did, and then they pounced. So you just need to see an Italiano team just like go grab the game by the balls. It's too many
Right.
times that they don't do that.
Yeah, but I mean, that's no, he was like that at Fiorentina, though. I don't know when it's gonna switch. Maybe he just needs a couple better players. I'm not sure, but I mean, that's what he does. Like they'll Bologna will be Italiano in general. It was the same thing with Fiorentina. They'll look like a top 5 team in the league, and then all of a sudden they'll look like Juve for the first month of the season, where they literally do nothing but just hold the ball.
Yeah, I mean that goes to show the obviously the most important stat in soccer is goals. Doesn't matter how much possession you have, how pretty
Yeah.
you play, how many passes you have, how many crosses. All that matters is who has the most goals at the end of the game. Obviously,
Another big team that dropped points. Lazio went to we were what we claimed to be the hardest place to play for quite a bit of time. They went to Venice and drew a game 0-0. And Motts thought that Venezia should have had 3 points in this one.
yeah, I think they outplayed him. You know what I liked? What I like to see about what I saw from Venezia was the physicality they played with. And you said it. You were like, I think that there should have been a lot of yellow cards on Venezia in the second half. I disagreed. Anytime that a Lazio player had the ball, they made sure that they felt them. They were there. They were pushing them, grabbing them, which I love from a team that's going down. You saw the fight in them. At the end of the day, they created more chances, in my opinion, in the second half. I know the game's gonna say Lazio had more XG than them, but Venezia had the chances in the second half. But Lazio kind of, I don't want to say gave up, but they pulled a Juventus. It didn't look like this game mattered at all. And this game mattered for Lazio. They dropped more points. Juventus now has a 2 point cushion on them. Lazio is going to have multiple games a week now that they're in the Europa League. So, yes, you were away, so it's tough to win away, but a team that's going down or is in right now in relegation zone, you got to get all 3 points. And not only do you have to get all 3 points, you got to look like you want it. I mean, that coming from me, who've seen Juventus not look like they want anything, I saw this and I was like, "Am I watching Juventus?" They didn't care at all. They weren't going for it, and they kind of just rolled over and let Lazio have this game, which is why I thought that they deserved, or Venezia have this game, which is why I thought they deserved all 3 points.
Yeah, I think it's fair. They didn't. Lazio did not have it, and what I will say, and this has happened several times this year. No Ravella, they are a completely different team. He was not available in this game, and they like kind of lose their ability to create chances without him. It's really weird.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Yeah,
He's a good player. I mean, it's hard. It's tough to replace a player like Ravella who pulls the strings so much and dictates their tempo. I'd also say that not the best game from Nuno Tavares, who's kind of had that steaming start, and since then we haven't seen form. I know he's been a little banged up, but nothing too good from him. He actually got subbed out, and then same with Dia. He had one good opportunity,
yeah,
he
he had
didn't
a good
score,
opportunity. Yeah,
but for somebody who was putting away chances left and right at the beginning of the season, he's kind of cooled off. And then one other big miss that they had is not in terms of a chance, but they're just missing Tati Castellanos. Like they don't have that goal scorer anymore, and I think he's going to be out for another month. So that's a big loss for Lazio in terms of their best, or one of their best goal scorers that they do not have.
yeah, I agree. Another big team, Inter Milan, got it done at home against Genoa 1-0, and I think got it done is what sums it up best. 1-0 game. Lautaro Martinez kind of popped up. He's been popping up this season when they needed him to. In those tight games, he has tended to be the guy that got it done. And that's a big one. This Genoa team has been tough to play against for a little bit of time now since Patrick Vieira took over, and they've been hard to break down. And a 1-0 game you'll take realistically. I mean, nobody's going to remember this game other than they got 3 points.
Yeah, this was a lucky game. Inter are very lucky that they skated away with 3 points. They got a corner kick goal by Lautaro. It did hit off a Genoa defender, so the goalie was kind of caught flat-footed because he didn't expect it to go that way. But Lautaro did get his head on it. But I mean, they scored in the 78th minute. This game was very close to being a 0-0 draw at home to Genoa, which would have been terrible for Inter in terms of dropping points, and great for Juve. So I was very upset when I saw Lautaro did score. But I had some questions about the lineup here. Fertezzi was just playing so well when he was requesting a transfer in January. Is he injured? They haven't played him in a long time. Mkhitaryan is like, he is. I don't know when Inzaghi is going to just move on from Mkhitaryan. I understand that he's a good player and he can do things that maybe Fertezzi and Zelensky can't, but he's old. You're not going to have him next year. Why do you rely on him so much? It's every single game he's playing. I don't understand it. Also, what I thought was interesting was Juan Correa, right? You have a lot of different options in Taremi, who I think has been very underwhelming this season. You want to get his confidence up, coming with that you have the Champions League and still the Coppa Italia. And I don't think Correa played well at all. You also have Arnautovic, who is a good player, who once again hasn't got that many opportunities. So it's like, why are you going to somebody who was, I don't think has played at all this season. I think he's got one game, and it's kind of the same build / style of play as Lautaro Martinez is. You need like Lautaro clearly plays great with
Yeah, I
with
agree with
Thuram.
that. That's like, it would make way more sense to do like you said, Taremi or Arnautovic with Lautaro. Like Correa is the guy you rotate Lautaro like for, like very clearly. So I agree with that one. That's a very weird one. On the Mkhitaryan one, what I think it is I mean, we've seen this with Inzaghi. He really does not like to rotate the squad. Period. Like if he can play the guys that he wants to play, he will do that. And I think with how close the Scudetto race has been, Mkhitaryan has been one of his most consistent players the entire season. So like he wants to keep rolling him. And I think he's a little bit unconcerned with the whole, why am I spacing out on his name?
Who, Taremi,
Fertezzi.
Arnautovic,
Fertezzi.
Vitesse?
Like he doesn't care. Like if Fertezzi's going to stay, he's going to stay. If he's going to leave, he's going to leave. He's not worried about developing him. Like he's worried about winning today. And I think that's how he approaches the club.
Possibly. I don't love it. Like, even if you're worried about winning today, I think Vertezi is just better than Mkhitaryan. I maybe Barella and him don't play amazing together, but that
Like, we can't
you
even
don't give
say
them
that. We
you
don't
don't give
even
them opportunities to play together. Exactly. They have to learn how to play together. One thing I also wanted to say that I forgot to was first start for the goalie that they signed from Genoa, Martinez. He played great. He made some big saves to keep this 3 points for them. And he didn't have one start this season, which once again, on Inzaghi, why are you not rotate? You bought this guy. Get his feet wet, like a little wet. But Jan Sommer went down. He's going to be out for a month. So I think this will give Martinez some well-needed reps on the Inter team and at this high level, maybe in the Champions League against Napoli and the Coppa Italia and things, so on and so forth. So he did play a good game and made some great saves.
That's also an interesting one because Jan Sommer's pretty old. So if he plays well, he's got a spot next year. Like they just roll
He's
him as
gonna
a
be,
starter.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%, which is why I don't know why they haven't played him at all. Also, just one last thing about this game, Inzaghi, someone's got to give that man a card for not. He's never in his coaching box. He was taking the corner kick one time, screaming at his players, and no card, no nothing. And also, he just sweats so much. He's a great manager, great style of play, but I question a lot of his decision making in game. Going back to when he first started with Inter, I thought he made too many subs and pushed too many guys forward. Now I think he doesn't make enough subs and doesn't get his all of his guys enough playing time. So, while he does have a amazing system and it's very fun and pretty to watch Inter play, he has some very questionable decisions, in my opinion. Also, really quick, Inter just have tough schedule coming up with the Coppa Italia, and we do know Inzaghi loves to win the Coppa Italia. I think he's won like 3 or 4 already in his small career, and then they have Napoli, who are obviously in second place coming up, with Champions League right around the corner as well. So Inter's schedule is starting to get really, really tough, and they're going to see multiple games a week, especially if they go far in these tournaments.
Agreed. I'm moving it on. Another game that happened in Verona. Fiorentina went there and lost 1-0. Really, another one, really bad drop of points for Fiorentina. They lost at 95th minute, 96th minute, something like that. It was really late on in the game. And even 1 point here would have gone a long way. You can't be dropping 3 points to Verona, who have been a dumpster fire for a lot of the season. On the flip side of things, really big point for Verona in that relegation battle. They were the team that I said are going down last week. So it means a lot for them. But the bigger thing that we need to talk about with Fiorentina now, and we alluded to it a little bit earlier, Moise Kean got hurt. He got kneed in the face falling over, essentially, got back up, played a minute or two, then collapsed on the field. So he's presumably out, I would assume, for, I mean,
A couple weeks at
conservatively
least.
2 weeks, like
Yeah.
probably worst case 4 to 5 weeks, right? Gudmundsson is out. He's hurt. He was sick and then he got hurt, so he's also out. Fiorentina, in their next 4 games, they have Lecce, then they have Napoli, they have a Europa League, a Conference League game, Juventus, Atalanta, Milan, and presumably they are not going to have Moise Kean or Albert Gudmundsson for 2 of those games. They're in trouble without them.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to do.
They also, those Europe or UEFA, the Conference League games are coming up as well, which I know you mentioned, but they have 6 games in the next 2.5, 3 weeks. Like, it's a lot of games coming up, and they don't have their goal scorers. After Moise Kean came off the pitch, they were completely sterile. There was no opportunities, no chances. There was no hold up play. There was basically nothing. And I don't know who or how they're going to replace him. I know they had a good summer with bringing those players, but it is seeming like Palladino's not necessarily implementing Fagioli in the right spots. Once again, playing up a little too far up the pitch, not in his best role. And yeah, they're in a tough spot because I really had them going to make a run late on in the season, but after dropping points, they've lost 3 straight. Inter, Como, Verona. They got to get right against Lecce, right? But are they going to?
I
Where do the
just don't.
goals come
Yeah, where
from?
do the goals come? Because the other problem is that Kolpani's hurt too, so that kind of forced them to use Zaniolo as the right mid, and they cut. and he just didn't really understand the role. Like Zaniolo has always been like when he's played as a winger, it's been like an inside winger when you think of how traditionally Roma was playing with Mourinho. Pellegrini left wing, technically Zaniolo technically right wing. He's an
Mhm.
inside forward. He's a striker more. And they did that to get Beltran back at the 10, who was playing the 10 when Goodmanson was hurt. But they can't play him there. And presumably, in my mind, I think Zaniolo has to be your striker now because it's either
Yeah.
him or Beltran. That is worrying for me because I
I
don't
don't
think
I'm not
Zaniolo.
I'm close to saying I'm out fully on Zaniolo. He had a pretty good chance that Fiorentina kind of flicked over to
Yeah,
him, and it was one on with the goalie. He somehow put that over the net,
he
and
kind
the
of
goalie didn't
bailed out
touch
of it.
it.
He was scared of getting hurt and bailed
Yeah,
out of it. And then the other
yeah,
thing, he got some chances on the. He just looks uncomfortable when he's in wide areas. Like simply, like he got into crossing areas and then kind of like looked up and didn't know what to do with the ball. They they're fucked, I think, without Keane
it's
and
tough, I
Goodmanson because
know.
that was it. That was the two kind of strikers that, and they don't have a third striker other than Zaniolo, really.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they throw Fiorentina. He played kind of well, but he's not a striker at all. He's
Yeah.
more of an attacking mid,
And
outside
I've
player.
been impressed with him. I actually think Fuller has been really good, and that's looking like it's going to be like a season-saving kind of pickup with all these injuries
Mhm.
they had. But I don't think there's a way to recover from this. You just
Yeah.
lost you have your 3 best players essentially are out.
Yeah, and then Fagioli is probably your 4th now, and it's gonna take him some time no matter what to implement just his new team, new tactics, new role. But, like, their defense is still solid and De
Yeah.
Gea is good, right? So that is what they can kinda hang their hat on now. Verona did get lucky. It was a very lucky deflection goal, so they were unlucky to take at least 1 point away from this, but like you said, like there's gonna be no we don't know where the offense comes from. It's gonna probably have to come from set pieces, corner kicks, because I mean sometimes Moise Kean would take on the whole take out one it'd be one pass to Kean, he would hold up the player, get by the guy, and then shoot the ball. Like it wasn't a lot of creativity, and it's a lot of crosses to Kean as well. He's scoring a lot with his head. So it's gonna be interesting to see. They might be screwed. I really hope that they can at least figure it out in this UEFA League leg, so that they can at least advance, or the Conference League leg. Sorry about that. So they can at least advance and then hopefully get Keane back in the next week. But I agree with you. I don't know what's gonna happen with them.
For sure. One game I skipped over here in the planning. On Friday, we had Udinese at Lecce, which was a rock fight of a game. It was not a very good game. But the one goal came from a penalty, and I'm sure everybody saw online. Lorenzo Luca took said penalty and did score it. However, prior to that, it was kind of a shit show because he was not supposed to take said penalty.
Yeah, he basically the captain. I don't know if I forgot the captain was supposed to take the kick, or
Yeah. Florian Thauvin is supposed to be their penalty kick taker.
and Luca Lorenzo just fully pushed him off. Would not put the ball on the ground until he left. Absolutely buried the PK, and then immediately gets subbed off by the coach, which is pretty funny. And then Udinese do not score another goal. They had some chances, but it was other than that, it was pretty uneventful. But that pretty much to me goes to show that Luca he's approaching the 10 goal mark.
That was
He
10. I think
is
that was 10.
Oh, that was 10?
Yeah.
He's an up and coming striker in this league, and I think that's him saying like, "Fuck this team, I want out, and this is how I'm gonna show you guys I want out." However, if you're another team, it's like, do I wanna buy a guy who's gonna, like, do that on my team? I'm sure he probably won't do that when he knows that he's around players that are better than him. But yeah, that was crazy. I don't think I've ever seen that before. I've seen arguments happen on the PK spot, specifically when like Neymar went to PSG and it was him or Cavani, but they would always like eventually agree. This guy literally just like
They were
would
trying
not
to
put the
they
ball
were trying
down.
to rip the ball out of his hands, and he had an iron grip on. They were, like, sneaking behind him to, like, punch it free, and he just
Yeah.
had an iron grip on it. It was insane to watch live.
Imagine if he didn't make it.
Oh, it would've been a disaster. He fucking housed it, though.
He buried it. And then the manager just goes to show like, you gotta listen to your fucking
Yeah,
captain. You're
yeah, you
coming
have to.
out.
Yeah. Fair enough on the manager. I think that was the right decision.
Definitely the right decision.
But to keep it moving on, now I lost my place. Oh, Atalanta went to Empoli, beat the hell out of them. This is vintage Atalanta, vintage Gasparini ball. Oh, they wasn't this game in Bergamo? No,
Yeah,
probably
this
guess
is in
not.
Bergamo.
Okay, it
Oh,
was.
no, 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 this was in Empoli. This
Oh, it
You're right.
was.
This was
Okay.
in Empoli.
So they beat him 5-0. Notably here, Retegui scored another one. Adamola Lookman had a brace, and Davide Zappacosta scored as well. This is what you want to see from Napoli. Pick out points when other people are dropping points. They're
Atalanta.
Atalanta. I apologize. They are very much in this race. 3 points behind Inter. Same amount of games played.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, listen,
And they're
I do
streaky.
Atalanta have some tough games coming up, so we'll have to see what happens, but we know what they do. They beat up on the lesser opponents, and they sometimes struggle on the higher opponents, but I don't think that this is breaking news from Atalanta. I think the news that came out of Atalanta is from off the pitch, right? So, in the Champions League game, second leg, Lookman got subbed on, scored a goal, so was feeling good, and then Atalanta drew a penalty. Lookman took it, missed it. Atalanta obviously lost the game. Gasparini came out and said, I don't know why Lookman's taking the penalty. He sucks at taking the penalties. If you go back and look at Lookman's penalties, he is probably 50-50 on conversions. He either fucking buries them or he absolutely shanks them and hits them right at the goalie and misses them. But still not something that you want your manager to say about you, right? You want your manager to only come to your defense and say good things about you. And so Lookman took offense to that and came out with a statement and was like, I don't know why Gasparini said that. I'm kind of hurt by it. I'm probably going to leave the club in the summer. And then later on in the week, Gasparini comes out and is saying, hey, all good things have to come to an end. It's been a great run at Atalanta. My contract runs out not this summer, but next summer. Maybe I'll even leave this summer. So a lot of news coming out of Bergamo, and it is kind of funny timing because Vos, you did say last episode, I don't know who can stay. I don't know who's coming back. We did think Lookman might leave. I didn't think Gasparini was going to leave, especially based on the conversations he had last summer when they won the Europa League, and I want my players to stay. They made a lot of investments this summer buying really good players. So Gasparini just goes, abandons them. I would be shocked there. It does look like he might do that. Lookman looks like got one foot out the door. I don't know how a team doesn't go and buy Retegui after the season he's had this year. So a lot is going to happen, I think, to Atalanta in the summer. Great game by them. This is a classic Atalanta game, but I think that was the headlines coming out of Bergamo.
What I hate about this whole thing is it was almost like the Champions League thing happened and Gasparini just forgot they were still competing in the league. Like in that statement is something you say like when you're done, like you're done with this project, right? Like you were trying to win the Champions League. If you're not going to do it, then you don't care. It's like kind of what I feel, and it just sets the stage for them to not compete like going forward. Now, like you're ruining the vibes at the club. Arguably your best player, if not the best, second best in Lookman. You're kind of showing him the door, and it's just bad. Like it's a really bad look.
So I think that this was Gasparini being able to kind of fire back at Lookman because he's been one foot out the door for last summer now, tried to do it in January as well. And as much as we praise Gasparini for his tactical genius and his system is amazing, he scores a ton of goals. The Atalanta's always in the mix. They get the most out of every player. When a player leaves, they're not the same. We've seen this before. He struggles with managing. That's why he can't go manage an Inter or a Juve successfully because those players have bigger egos, and as bad as it is to say, they don't want their egos damaged and they want to be supported by their coach. And Gasparini, time and time again, doesn't do that. He doesn't manage big personalities well, and that's why he's been so successful in Atalanta because they usually don't have big personalities. But a player like Lookman, who won the African Player of the Year, who scored a hat trick in the Europa League, he's got an ego, obviously, and rightfully so because of what he's done. And we've seen it before. Gasparini just is not a man manager, and it goes back to that. And you're right; it's not the right time to take the shot at somebody who's got one foot out the door when you should be praising him to try to keep him like Conte was with Cavada, and that came down to a money thing and whatnot. But just not the right timing, not the right thing to do if you're Gasparini. And this might be the beginning of the end of this great Atalanta squad.
It started to look like that for sure. But the last game we had, the Bianconeri got it fucking done in Sardinia. Really hard game to win. They squeaked this one out 1-0, courtesy of Dusan Vlahovic.
Yeah, and I will preference that it is tough to go get 3 points away at Cagliari. With that said, your Juventus, and being that once again the people closest to you in the table dropped points, right? Napoli dropped points, Lazio dropped points, Fiorentina dropped points, Milan dropped points. So this getting 3 points here is and was absolutely massive for Juve because it just gives us more of a cushion to the in the fourth place. And we're now closing the gap. We're even 8 points out of first. The Scudetto is not in my sight. We have no chance of winning the Scudetto. I don't want any Juventini thinking it, but it is something to be said with 12 games left or 8 points away. With that said, this was once again a classic 2024-2025 Juventus Thiago Motta performance. First half, utter domination. They couldn't sniff their 18. It was all Juventus all the time. They should have left this half up 3-0. Yildiz should have had 2 goals. Vlahovic should have had 1, which he did have, which great start by Motta. I think you're probably going to part ways with Vlahovic, so you need to get the most out of him in order to sell him for at least some fee and not kill all his value. And so he has 8 goals and 11 games against Cagliari. So I think great start. He's successful there. And great play by Dusan. He read the play, stole the ball. Great finish as well. Got around the keeper and scored it. And then in the first half, Dusan was doing things that I've never seen him do in my life. He was playing as a false 9. He was receiving the ball. He was passing it. He was getting other people involved. He should have had an assist to Yildiz because Yildiz really should have scored that goal. And then we go into the locker room. Second half comes, and we're scared of the fucking moment again. We are wasting time to try to get 3 points on this team when we should be going to try to kill the game off and score the second goal. We did not have a shot on target until the 80th minute or so when the game was so wide open, and it was just attack. Juve would attack, they would attack, Juve would attack. It was just attack after attack. And the game felt like they were going to score and we were going to tie again, as we always do, because we don't have fight desire. We look scared. We don't have a leader on the pitch, just kind of like Milan. There's no real leader. And the last thing I'll say is Motta's subs were awful. Number 1, I don't understand why Coop Miners is still playing over Thuram. Thuram is playing every game he plays, and every time he's in, he plays amazing. Coop Miners still figuring out how to play. I get he spent more money on Coop Miners and you want to get the money worth out of it, but play the better player. Stop having favoritism, Motta. Play Thuram. Number 2, you subbed in Douglas Luiz before you subbed in Thuram, and so the midfield was McKennie, Locatelli, Douglas Luiz, that I thought played well in the first leg in the Champions League against PSV. But when you play Locatelli and Douglas Luiz, they kind of do the same thing, and so they don't know who should do what because they both want to receive the ball from the center backs, progress the play, pick out a pass. Also, Douglas Luiz missed the PSV game because he was injured. Douglas Luiz got subbed in around the 60th minute and was taken off for injury in the 80th. Why are you subbing him on if he's still possibly injured? Number 1. Number 2, why are you subbing him on before Thuram if he's possibly injured? Sub on Thuram in the 60th and then Douglas Luiz in the 80th to be the closer. It makes no sense. So I question Thiago Motta's leadership, what he says at halftime, because constantly at halftime, Juventus comes out not hungry and scared. I know Locatelli's the captain, but is he a good leader? I know Gatti likes to lead, but is he a good leader? Although I do think Gatti has been probably our best and most consistent player because he plays every game this season. But at the end of the day, Gatti should be a third center back. Gatti should be the third center back of this team. He should not be the best center back that we have and the most consistent center back that we have. So was it great that we got 3 points? Yes. Are we closing in on stumbling Napoli? Yes. That was our 4th win. This is a terrible stat. That was our 4th win in the league in a row in 3 years. That's fucking terrible. But it's not trending in the right direction. We got lucky. We hung on with our fingernails to that game, to a team that we are miles better than. They look more hungry. They look like they had the desire, the fight to go and tie the game, not us, which is not what you want to see from your team.
Well said, Mons. I don't think
So
I have anything more to add. I don't. I really don't. But lucky for you, Juve is back in. That's match week 26. Sorry, jumped the gun there. Juve is back in action midweek. Coppa Italia hosting Empoli. There is no way they don't get this one done, right? Like,
You'd hope so. I mean, I'm interested to see who he goes with in terms of up top with Dusan and Colomwani, because he did start Dusan last game and Dusan did play well. But Colomwani is obviously in form, and you don't want to waste his form by just benching him continually. But the Coppa Italia is usually where the, not reserves, but the second stringers get more time. So I'd assume he'd go with Dusan. I'd love to see them both play, but we'll see what happens there. I do think this will be the debut game of the first winter signing that Giuntoli decided to sign, that, in my opinion, made absolutely no sense, in Alberto Costa. $15 million for a right back when we already have Weah's been having a great season at right back. We have Kalulu. I know he's injured, but will be coming back. We have Savona as well. I don't know why we splurged $15 million on that position, but we should see him. And listen, we are Juventus. You need to win trophies to have successful seasons. Even if Juventus win the Coppa Italia this season, which I don't think that they will, I still don't think it's a good season. It would be the same thing as last year, finishing in the top 4, winning the Coppa. Like, that's not a good season. But I do think, like, if Juventus get knocked out at this point in the Coppa, oh my God.
to Empoli at
The
home,
media,
that'd be bad. That'd be
the
bad.
media will go crazy. So it's a must win. It's an absolute must win. I think every game from here on out for Juventus is a must win. Yes, the
that's
other
fair.
one
Yeah,
is
so
Inter
they're
at
playing on
Lazio.
Wednesday. I forgot this one. They're playing on Wednesday, and then I think they're going to Lazio tomorrow, Tuesday. So that's going to be a really good game. I am curious to see what Inzaghi does with his squad there, because I could totally see him rolling out the best 11 in that one, and I'm not sure that would be the right thing to do. Maybe.
Now Napoli coming up in the Champions League game. But yeah, I mean, knowing Inzaghi, he's going to play 8 of his best 11.
Yeah, and then the other game we got this week, we have the match week number 9 rescheduling. Milan at Bologna on Thursday. Massive game for table implications. They're both level on points right now, so that one's going to be massive. Ton of calcio this week. Holy shit!
If one of those teams loses that game, that will set them back tremendously. Like, if one of those teams loses, they will be on 26 points, 26 games, 41 points. That's only one ahead of Roma. And think about how we were talking about Roma the start of the season. How are you one ahead of them? Granted, have Roma turned it around like we talked about in the beginning of the episode and not lost a game in so long? Yes. You had a 10-game or 10-point head start on them, and now you're going to be 1 point. Even if you tie, you're 2 points behind them. So massive, massive game for Milan and Bologna. And if Logan's prediction, which we both don't think is going to come even close to correct, and Milan's going to get in the top 4, that's a must win. Must win. If they lose or even tie that game, that's not good.
Yeah, Bologna's thinking the same thing though, so it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. But we got batch week 27 at the weekend. Running guys through the games. Lecce's going to Fiorentina. I mean, I think Lecce's going to get points out of that one at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Venezia going to Atalanta. I don't see a way that's not a bloodbath. Inter at Napoli.
People are saying this is the match for the Scudetto. I think that it will get that hype because it's 1 versus 2. As I mentioned earlier, Napoli are stumbling, Inter on the rise. I really think it's already Inter's race to lose. I think this is better for the lower teams. Like Atalanta and Juve can really capitalize on this result, because if Napoli lose and Atalanta and Juventus win, Atalanta will jump them. Juventus will be like 3 points behind them, right? If they both tie, Atalanta and Juve are now 4 points away from Napoli and 7 points away from Inter. So it's really, really big. The worst scenario for Atalanta and Juve would be if Napoli win, which I don't really see how that
Yeah,
happens.
I don't either. I think Napoli are not in a position to compete with Inter right now. Could be wrong.
Yeah.
I could be totally wrong, but
It is
different.
in Naples, so it gives them the slight edge, but I don't see how they get it done.
Yeah. Couple other ones we got: Parma at Udinese, Torino at Monza, Empoli at Genoa, Cagliari at Bologna, Como at Roma. That's a great game.
Great game.
Lots.
Como beat Roma earlier in the season in Como 2-0. So now that was the last time Roma lost in the league. So let's see if they can kind of get their revenge game. Both teams are very, very hot. This is a good game.
Both teams need to win too. And then we got Lazio at Milan. That's another really big week for Milan. That's a really big week for Milan.
Wow, that's true. I mean, if you tie or lose, I'll tell you what though, Lazio, I'd love a draw, and then Juve win, and we have more of a cushion on Lazio.
Milan have to win one of these games. They have to beat Bologna. They have to beat Lazio. They
realistically, if they want a chance to finish top 4, they have to win both. Because if you're getting 4 points and Juve gets 3, Juve's just still increasing that gap between them. But if Milan can get all 6, then they're not that they're not in the race now, but they would fully be back and dangerous. If they draw, tie, they are still in the race, but they're not dangerous, I don't think.
No, I agree. And then to wrap it up, we got Juve hosting Verona again.
Must win. Every game from here now is for Juve is a must win.
And we got to wrap it up.
Colpi di Luna.
Colpi was bad last week.
Colpi went 0-3, but there was a lot of weird shit that happened.
Yeah, there's also that we were due for an 0-3. We've been so hot. I picked a goal scorer, which you never should pick before you see the lineup, because he didn't fucking start. So he got 40 minutes, not even 35. So he came close to scoring though. But yeah, I mean, once I saw Colo wasn't starting, I was like, well, my leg didn't hit, but we were already 0-2, so it didn't matter at that point.
Yeah. So we've amended.
So let's get back on the scoreboard.
Back on the scoreboard. We're starting with Logs here. Logue sent us about 6 picks, so we picked our high conviction pick here. Como at Roma. He's got both teams to score -120. I like it. I like it a lot.
I like it as well. Although last game I didn't just mention Como won 2-0. Roma's a different team. They've been on fire. They've been scoring goals. So yeah, I like this pick by Logs, -120. A little value there. It's a good pick. I will go next. I'm going back to the old reliable that has led me to a 56% winning percentage. And that's the over, because we never bet the under. And I have Inter at Napoli over 2.5. Typically in the last couple Napoli games, they've allowed a goal in at least once a game. They can usually score one as well. And we know Inter is always going to have the opportunity or capability to put at least 2-3 home. So whereas people might think this is a defensive battle, I think goals will be scored, and I think at least 3 goals will be scored. +115.
And then to wrap it up, I picked this, and I'm not sure why I did.
Oh, this is a terrible pick.
I've got Juve -1.5 at home against Verona.
That's a terrible pick. It's an absolutely terrible pick.
Verona are bad, dude.
Verona are bad, but listen, Juve beat them earlier in the season 3-0. Juve also beat Como earlier in the season 3-0. They sneaked out a win against Como the last time, like 2-1. They beat PSV earlier in the season 3-1. They lost PSV this time. Juve have gotten worse since the beginning of the season, and they don't know how to go kill a game off. Like if they're winning 1-0, they're fine with being like, Allegri ball, Corto Musso, 1-0. We're scared. Hopefully we win. So I hate it, but
there's no way Verona can go back-to-back games against great teams though. I feel like
they could be riding. They could be riding that high.
They could be, but that brings the whole Colby to +688. We probably should have gone with some easier picks, given that we went 0-3 last week, but we can't do that. We cannot do that. So we're probably 1 week out from slump busters if we need them. But for now, we're going to ride it +688. That's it for us, guys. Thanks for tuning in. As always, follow us on all the socials at Calcio Culture FC. We're on Spotify. We got video on Spotify now. It looks really good. They also figured out their audio. We're on Apple Pods and we're on YouTube. If there's anything you guys want us to talk about, feel free to reach out to us. I know some of the listeners But you other guys that are tuning in every week, feel free to shoot us a note. We're more than happy to talk about whatever you want.
Yes, sir. Greatly said there, Vos. Please subscribe and like on YouTube, especially. It helps the video reach more Calcio fans. Also want to give Vos a nice shout out making all those thumbnails. Those are great thumbnails on YouTube. So, attaboy Vos. Great episode here. We will see you all next week. Do not be a Gagoots and Forza Calcio Culture.